With Void being one of the focused elements this season, I've been struggling to find a good DPS loadout for Void Hunter. Now, there's always Big Tether with Deadfall, but it's not the best for damage, and the weekend just doesn't feel like enough, especially with mobile bosses like Karev from Sunder Doctrine. But then I remembered a loadout that I used way back in Witch Queen when Void 3.0 was brand new, and that's Starter Scales. You pair this with Mobius Quiver, which is a pretty solid damage option, and it's fast, so you can get back to dealing weapon damage, and it's just very solid. For you that don't know, Starter Scales will get you your super faster. It gives you an extra 2% super energy for every orb you pick up. And then when you collect orbs after your super is charged, you gain stacks of Feast of Light. And at 6 stacks, which is the maximum, you will get 70% increased super damage, which is substantial. So this will get you super faster and even stronger. On top of that, we have the Great Void Kit, which gives us Devour for free healing and grenade energy. We're getting Overshield from Repulsor Brace on our weapon. And then we're also using the new aspect on the Prowl so that we can get some extra benefits just as we're killing enemies normally. Let's see, we're just clearing through here. We have 5 stacks of Feast of Light. We're about to collect the last one here. There it is. And then we're just going to take out this boss, and we're not even going to use our full super on it. Yep, that sounds good to you? Let's get into it. I'm Engineer. So just for a build review, the general goal here is to gain your super quickly and empower that super damage. And you're going to get there by just slaying out and getting as many kills as possible leading up to it. You're going to do it faster than normal. You'll get that super pretty quickly, even though it's not a roaming super. So use for this is obviously boss damage, but it's also fine for ad clear. Never hurts to get your super back for clearing out ads. I've tested this to 15 power level under. I think you could probably go a little bit further. You're just gonna have to play carefully and work with your team. For the pros, it's got very solid healing thanks to Devour, pretty frequent invisibility, frequent supers and or your stronger super. Mobius Quiver is very solid for damage, though it's not the highest. You do have a few better options out there, like your Celestial Nighthawk Golden Gun's probably still gonna do a little bit better, or your Gathering Storm Arc Hunter, but if you want to be on Void and you want to mix it up, this is going to hold itself really well. On the con side, your survivability relies on Overshield because you're on Void, and that relies on Repulsor Brace because Void Hunters don't have a great source of Void Overshield. A lot of the easy use of this is going to depend on your weapon rolls. It's a very weapon focused build. You're going to mix in abilities there here and there to just get some extra orbs, but your weapon needs to be really good because you just need to be slaying out pretty constantly. But overall, really happy with the build, and let's get into it. So first, starting with our exotic, it's Star Eater Scales. If you don't have this, it requires owning Beyond Light, and you can get it from either Vex Strike Force in the Amuna or Rahul's Novel Decryption after resetting his reputation once within an episode or season. Now, what does this exotic do? Every orb power you get gives you an additional 2% super energy. This is not applied if you're using 3-shot Golden Gun on like Prismatic or Solar though, so keep that in mind. Now, once your super is charged, as you pick up an orb power, you get stacks of Feast of Light. Those will increase your damage by up to 70%, which is really good. And on top of that, you will also restore your health as you cast your super, and you'll gain an Overshield for 16 seconds, which is really solid, just to give you some extra survivability during that DPS. So really good, pretty basic, works on pretty much every subclass. I think I will probably do a video covering this more because I think it's a little bit slept on and just really good in a lot of use cases. Moving over to our aspects and abilities, we are going to use Stylish Executioner. This is just a good all-around benefit. It's going to give you a little bit of invisibility as you're using other abilities and inflicting herbs, which is pretty easy, especially this episode. Now for our second aspect, we're going to take On the Prowl. I'm not the biggest fan of this aspect. If you've seen some of my other videos, I kind of crap on it, but the biggest thing here is as you're killing enemies a lot, like during a boss fight or an ad clear phase, you will inevitably kill some priority targets, which just gives you another source of visibility, and it will give you and your teammates some ability energy. I think we're still working on testing, trying to figure out what that ability energy is. It doesn't seem very significant. It doesn't seem very large, but it doesn't hurt. And on top of that, this gives us 3 fragment slots, which is very helpful. Now for super, we really want Mobius Quiver for boss damage, but if you're doing a lot of ad clear, you might want to switch to Spectral Blades because it's a roaming super. It will charge even faster. The orb benefit will be the same, but the weapon damage you deal will give 3 times the super energy. For the grenade, I like Scatter Grenade or Magnetic Grenade. They have the lowest cooldown on Void, and they're both very solid. For your melee, you have to use Snare Bomb. That's all you got. And then for your last ability, your dodge is pretty flexible. If you need a lot of extra reloads, like in DPS, then Marksman Dodge is good, but if for general gameplay, I'd recommend Gambler's Dodge because it gives you 1 extra source of weaken from your snare bomb so that you can make extra orbs as you're fighting around. And you can use it to mess with enemies if they're getting too close to you and you need to reload or something. Moving over to our fragments, I recommend Echo of Harvest because that will generate orbs when you kill weakened enemies. Then Starvation gives you Devour whenever you collect Void Breaches or orbs. Echo of Persistence is going to give you longer Devour, Overshield, and Invisibility, all three of which we will use at some point in this build. We're going to take Echo of Undermining for weakening grenades. We just want as many sources of weaken as possible, and this just makes them a little bit stronger. And then lastly, I take Repulsor for more super energy. This is a pretty unique fragment in that it actually gives super energy. A lot of the old ones have been converted to just giving orbs, but this one is still very solid. Some other ones that you might think about. Echo of Instability gives you volatile rounds whenever you get a grenade kill. You don't need this episode because there's an artifact perk that will do that all the time for you. There's actually 2 artifact perks that will give you volatile pretty easily, so not necessary here. I don't show it in the chart on the right, but Echo of Domineering will give you free loads whenever you suppress enemies. Your Mobius Quiver Tether will suppress on hit, and you get 2 shots of it. So you can basically get a free reload up to twice during your damage phase while you're casting your super, so that's pretty helpful. Moving over to our mods and armor stats, we generally just want to build for maximum orbs here. We have Harmonic Siphon, Firepower, and Reaper. I would take heavy-handed, but snare bombs are not good at killing stuff, so it doesn't really make sense. On top of that, we want to build for maximum void weapon damage and reload. I have 2 void weapon surges here and an Enervation to get some grenade energy back, but you can go 3 if you feel like that's better. 2 is 17% and 3 I believe is 22% damage. One thing I also recommend here is Impact Induction on the hands, because that on the prowl smoke cloud counts as melee damage, and that will give you extra grenade energy whenever that hits enemies with a 7-second cooldown. Some other quality of life things, don't forget time dilation so that surges last longer, and powerful attraction is going to be really valuable for helping pick up orbs as you're running around and shooting stuff. On the stat side, it's a little bit dire here. We have a lot of stat penalties on Void, so we're going to try and maximize resilience, get discipline as high as we can, and then just get everything else to at least 30. And that's about all you can do. Strength is probably the most dumpable stat, especially if you use Gambler's Dodge, but you just don't really want to tank anything too bad. On our artifact perks, the most important one is Volatile Marksman. So this is in column 2, and when you get multiple precision hits within 3 seconds of each other, or you score 3 kills with void weapons, you get volatile rounds for 10 seconds. It's that easy, just constant volatile rounds. And then if you boost this, which is pretty easy as well, all those volatile detonations will give you class ability energy, which really helps out just for getting those extra dodges, keeping you going. In column 3, there's not a whole lot for this build necessarily, but there is a pretty solid one for machine guns called Hold the Line. And so what this does is, as you get kills with machine guns while surrounded by enemies, you will restore 55 HP. And you also get a boost to reload speed, which is just really solid. If you're using machine gun, especially for like ad clear stuff, it's gonna be really good. In column 4, you get a perk that will help you inflict more weaken as you're inflicting volatile, so it's going to take Volatile Marksman and boost that up a little bit. Now, later on in this episode, we should be getting a boost for this, that every time you inflict weaken, you get Void Overshield, and that's going to make Void builds even stronger, but we do not have that yet. And lastly, in column 5, we have Void Flux, so when you kill a weakened enemy with a Void weapon, it just makes a free volatile explosion around them. So it's just even more volatility with very little work. And as you're just kind of running and gunning here, that's going to be very effective. Now, weapons. This is a pretty heavily weapon-focused build. So my goal here is to have Repulsor Brace plus some damaging perk on a primary weapon so we can use it a lot. Now, our best damaging perks are Onslaught, which will increase your rate of fire as you get kills and your reload speed. Desperate Measures, which will work off of weapon kills and grenade kills. Frenzy, which when you're in combat for a certain amount of time will give you 15% extra damage. And also plus 100 reload stat, which will keep your reload pretty high so that you can keep kind of running and gunning. Adrenaline Junkie will progress off of weapon kills, but it will automatically max out if you get a grenade kill, which we try and do pretty often. That'll give you a 33.3% damage boost. So all those are really solid. Now for weapons that use these, Joxer's Longsword, which is from Crucible this episode, has Adrenaline Junkie or Desperate Measures, really solid. Mahe's HC4 has Frenzy that you can pair with that Repulsor Brace, and is a burst hand cannon, which is the strongest hand cannon archetype at current. Word of Crota is from the Crota's End raid, but it can also roll with Frenzy or Adrenaline Junkie if you want a little bit more damage, but that can also be paired with Repulsor Brace. Rasarago 4 is a little bit older of a world drop. You should be able to focus this now, and you can also farm for it in lost sectors, but it rolls with Onslaught, which you will see in the next gameplay clip, and it's very fun if you are slaying out because you're just firing super fast and just reloading really quickly too. Now, if you do want to use an exotic, none of these have Repulsor Brace. We do have a couple exotics that can get Repulsor Brace like perks, but none of them really make sense of this build. For your exotic options, there's Choir of One, which actually uses special ammo, but it hits so hard. So as long as you think you can keep that ammo up, maybe put a special ammo finisher mod on, something like that, then that is a really solid option. Hardlight was freshly buffed this episode and will give you an extra 30% damage whenever you get Devour, which is really solid, but once again, no defenses on it. And then Graviton Lance is just one of the strongest exotic primaries in the game. It has been forever. Very, very good. So definitely can't go wrong there if you're just kind of starting out and you don't have these other weapons. So just want to show you a little longer gameplay loop. This is, as I've done recently, the opening of Contest of Elders. It is a kind of hectic encounter surrounded by enemies. This is, I think, just about on power level here. Maybe just a few power level under, but it's a lot of different enemies from different directions, a couple Bane enemies and all that kind of stuff, but still holds up pretty fine. You can see we get the Overshield up pretty decently. Overshield will get knocked out decently fast if you're taking a lot of fire, so just keep that in mind. But as long as you're weakening enemies and then shooting them, it's going to work out pretty well. You can see the on the prowl marks coming up periodically. That's just free extra visibility and resources. Definitely kind of play around with cover with this. As with most builds, you want to use cover so that every enemy on the field isn't shooting you at once. You can see on the left of the screen here, just orbs popping left and right. Do not forget to collect them. Sometimes you can get kind of distracted. So yeah, I'm actually missing a few orbs here now that I'm watching it back, which is unfortunate, but we've already got a super back, so we're doing pretty good. And then once you got your super, the orbs aren't wasted. They'll give you Feast of Light, which we're already maxed out on now, so we can use that whenever we feel ready. I got a Bane enemy here, watching out for those mines. Pretty consistent overshield here, just really solid. I don't really talk about special or heavy ammo weapons here, but just use whatever makes sense for you. If you're doing some with champions, make sure you can counter them with whatever you need, and then just use something good for DPS, whether that's grenade launcher, machine gun, rocket launcher, etc. See, we've popped our super here. We've taken out one of those model prisoner enemies that's a little bit tanky and also chipped down the boss a bit, and then we're just clearing out all these other enemies here. Unfortunately, we won't get enough orbs to get our super back again because there's just not enough enemies here, but if you have a weapon for your kinetic or darkness slot that has attrition orbs, that can be really good too, so keep that in mind. But I like to still mostly focus on the void weapon and just make sure it's doing good damage. So pretty much cleared out everything here. Scrounge for orbs, but I just have to take out the boss the old-fashioned way. We do have a lot of sources of weaken here, which is really great. So we've weakened the boss. We're gonna get Bane switch up on our edge transit, and then just knock him out super quick. Fix that weaken. That's pretty much it. So just summarize that gameplay loop. It's all about making orbs. So use your grenade on cooldown where it will kill somebody and secure you an orb. Dodge whenever possible so you can get Reaper and secure another orb. Use your grenade or your smoke bomb to weaken enemies about every 10 seconds because the cooldown on Echo of Harvest, extra orb, and then hold your super till you have Feast of Light times 6 if you need maximum damage. But if you need to, you can use it earlier. Don't just hold on to your super and miss a whole damage phase just because you're waiting for maximum damage. That's pretty much it. Not very complicated. As we wrap up, I just want to bring up that build review just to kind of summarize it. Let me know what you think in the comments. Let me know if you're interested in more Star Eater Scales builds. This works on a lot of subclasses and I think it's pretty fun. As always, thanks everyone for the support on the channel. I really appreciate the growth and all the new subscribers and all the comments. Feel free to leave comments down below, ask any questions. I love talking about builds. I hope to have a few more builds coming soon. And with that, I'll let you go. Thanks. Have a good one.